Welcome to VST Visionaries, a brand new podcast where creativity meets technology and music makers become plug-in pioneers. Whether you know a line of code or you don't know any coding at all, you're in the right place. Each episode, we sit down with these visionary plug-in developers, sound designers, producers, industry experts to learn about their journey and how they went from concept to execution. So whether you're a beat maker with a big idea or just someone fascinated with audio software, join us as we explore the future of sound, one plug-in at a time. In episode 1, we sit down with the talented sound designer and plugin maker Josh Dykesel, who goes by the name of Beatmaster Slim.
Yeah, hey, my name is Josh Dykesel, and I go by the artist name Beatmaster Slim. I started getting into music and audio 10 years ago, just by working on electronic music, and just ever since then, just started really building up audio gear and software and hardware. Um, and yeah, and now I have a company that I started called Slim Collective, and that's where I met Evan at Rompler here, and I started working on some VSTs. I have my first two out now. One of them's called Flutie, and the other one is called Mr. Foley. And now that I have Rompler, I can keep working on that. So yeah, it's good. But yeah, I'm located here in Bend, Oregon, and I've been working on music for a while.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Now, what was the first plugin that you actually created?
First one was a Mr. Foley, or sorry, first one was Flutie, and then recently I did Mr. Foley. But Flutie is my first one. I actually used it through the creation of flute samples that I created for my sample packs that I have on my website. And then after getting Rompler, I wanted to use some of those samples and create kind of like four different styles of flute sounds that you can manipulate in the user interface, and also just really pairs nicely with other VSTs and plugins and audio effects.
Great job on your first plugin. The samples in it, like you mentioned, that you already had, you brought them in. They sound great. It also looks awesome. It's real minimal look. What inspired the design?
It was interesting because like that one I didn't actually sketch anything out really per se at the start, other than like I did like a rough sketch of just the title in the center of like where I wanted that to be. Um, but for the interface itself, I guess kind of the tribal colors where it's like some like muted like orange or like clay colors for flutes, because one of them I had was more of like a tribal sound where it's like this distant flute. And I thought like that worked well to represent the instrument itself that was being portrayed in that. And then overall having a clean feel, that's something over the years that I've kind of developed for even my website. And like what I stand for as well, just having a simple, like complex but clean approach.
Okay, so we have the samples. You talked about you have the design. Now, what makes your plugins improve a music producer's workflow?
That's a good question. I would say for Flutie in particular, and just anything that I'll be working on later on, uh, anything I create, I think it's nice because I'm not just tailoring it to music production. I am also making it so people can use it for cinematic purposes or even sound design, of just like grabbing part of like a little like chunk from Flutie or another VST, and you like kind of trim it down and then you turn it into a textural element rather than having it as like the main chords, because you could also use it as chords or a lead. I actually worked on it with a like partnership with an Australian composer for Flutie, and he turned the Flutie instrument into this really cool epic pad that he just used for textural element.
Josh, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face so far with trying to get your Slim Collective plugins to stand out in this heavily saturated marketplace that we have today?
Yeah, the marketplace is definitely a little hard to crack into for sure when it comes to marketing. Like that's the biggest thing that has been a huge hurdle, just getting over that marketing hurdle while you're trying to create all this content and get it out there. I think the interface I tried to make stand out. So the nice thing is the VSTs themselves really stand out, but it's really been like getting it out there that's hard. Trying to like test different types of reels or video or portfolio showcase that you use to get people out there and see which one works the best. So still trying different techniques to see what really lands on that. Because yeah, it's a competitive industry, as you know.
Absolutely, it's definitely competitive, man. I agree. You talked about Reels. I see you have a website. It looks great. Are you using TikTok or any other platforms at this time to get your plugins out there?
For a while, I was using TikTok, and I think kind of like after the ban, I wasn't really using it as much at that point, so I ended up not using TikTok anymore. But Instagram has always been my primary form of platform that I use for social media and marketing and any of those purposes. Every once in a while, I use Facebook a little bit for my artist page, but it's mainly Instagram that I do that, and then just doing like Spotify, I have all my other music on, and just those kind of platforms for the music itself. But for the website and VSTs, I promote that on Instagram.
Okay, so there's tons of music software companies out there, plugin developers, plugin designers. Do you have a dream collaboration? Is there one company that stands out that you really would love to partner with or create a plugin with?
But eventually, it would be amazing to also work with Native Instruments. I've used a lot of their products over the years. I have their Machine Mark III, and I have their like DJ controller, DJ software, a bunch of their like software plugins and all that. So they've been a big part of my journey and just sound in general. They always have really good software.
Absolutely. NI is a giant in the space, and for a reason. They make incredible products. Is there a underrated plugin that you feel or that you use that you feel like a lot of people don't really know about?
That's yeah, that's a hard question. There's so many unique plugins. I'm trying to think. I think one of them that I used in the past that's pretty underrated, I would say, is Spitfire Labs. It's probably pretty well known now, but it wasn't in the past. But that's definitely a really good plugin. It's got a lot of like really good sounds, and that one's actually free. It still should be free, I think. But yeah, that one's got a lot of great orchestral sounds or textural elements, sound design, all that.
Okay, so you have two plugins currently ready to go for sale on your website. I hear that you have a third one in the works. Can you share a little bit about that at all?
Yeah, like I don't really have like it like fully ready to share, but for the process on it, I could share like what it is. So that one is going to be a synthesizer based plugin. I use some samples from my Behringer Poly D synth. Then I also use the Micro Brute by Arturia, and also the Moog Workstat. So I use those three synthesizers as a basis. Did a bunch of sound design and processing afterwards for some of them. But yeah, I'm working on that. I have some different like leads, effects, basses, and just textural elements in sound design that people can use for that one. This plugin will also be really good for just kind of across the board. Good for production, sound design, composition, you name it. But yeah, that's actually one that I want to pitch to you pretty soon when I'm done with that one. I already have 25 presets on that one so far. It's like
Absolutely.
25 totally unique sounds. It's gonna have like 50. Um, but yeah, I'm like pretty close with like getting like the rest of it done.
Okay, so as a fellow plugin maker myself, I always nerd out on the samples. Are you arranging and organizing your plugins on a single layer that you stretch out across multiple octaves or across multiple zones? Are you using multi velocity stacking? How are you creating your presets?
When I was starting out for Flutie, that one was just kind of across the board where I did have the one main sample for each preset, and I like made sure I like mapped it right, like chose the range that fit that sound best where it didn't sound like off on either
Mm-hmm.
like too low or too high on the keyboard. And then I did like the processing with reverb and EQing and whatnot afterwards to tweak it. But later on, as I've been working on some other ones, because I have another like percussion one that I've been working on too, called Percussion Buddy, and that one's gonna have like three different layers. So like each layer is a different sample, and that one you can like tweak the layer knob on there for the gain and panning. So you get like a really complex sound. So it's three different layers that you're manipulating on there. So that one's gonna have more of that layer and sample differentiation. But for Mr. Foley, I did actually have multiple samples on the keyboard for that one, where some of the presets would have. Well, I guess actually, yeah, all of them did have more samples across the keyboard, where it was the far left lower octaves had like darker sounds typically, and then I would have some of the higher pitched sounds like later on, and they were like different sounds like fabrics. So like different fabric samples would be mixed throughout the keyboard, and like vice versa for all of the other presets as well in there.
So, being the creator of a VST plugin generator that allows you to create your own plugins without any coding, I'm always fascinated to figure out where you guys actually heard about the product, how you stumbled on it. Josh, how did you hear about Rompler?
So for a while, I've thought the idea of making my own VSTs or plugins in general would be really cool. But I didn't have the like true coding to do that. Like I've taken some computer science classes in college, but I yeah, it wasn't my thing to be like a software developer, software engineer. But then I saw Rompler one day on Instagram, so I found it on there and I just thought it looked really cool. Checked it out online. Then I think I reached out to you shortly after that. But yeah, no, I checked it out and ended up really liking it once I started working around with it. Found it like pretty easy to like get into. But then obviously it's one of those things where just like anything else, it's really like complex to get to the like really, really professional side of it and get those complex tools. But it's easy to get started, which is nice. So that's why I really liked it.
Well, we're super happy to have you part of this community with Rompler. I have tons of plans for it. Talking about that, is there a certain feature that it's missing that would really help your workflow as a plugin maker yourself? What can I add into Rompler that could help you?
The one that I'm most excited for that I saw you're going to be adding is legato. I think that's going to be huge, especially for some of the orchestral plugins I want to make. I'm actually going to be having a meeting after our call with my film composer colleague, and we're planning on making a VST together with Rompler, and it's going to be an orchestral VST, possibly percussion based, where it's going to be like timpani or like those kind of like just big drums. And legato is really necessary for those to get an effective and more human and realistic feel. So I think that would be huge to have that.
Absolutely. And I know tons of sound designers are going to kill me if I don't ask you this question. It's a hot topic amongst the community, amongst discords everywhere. Is these AI tools? Are you using them in your workflow at all? How do you feel about the state of AI in music technology today?
I don't use AI too much. I never really got too much into the whole like chat GPT thing. But I will say when it comes to photo elements and using some of the assets, like individual parts of AI, like doing it for just one like individual task rather than having it do an entire thing, I feel like is better because I've noticed that AI just it can't replicate that human feel if you do it for everything. But if you do it for like a little small piece, it's actually really beneficial. Um, Part of the part in society that's like scared me a little bit, just of like the fact that I think it's being pushed a little too much to do it like for everything, like to do a full process. But I think it works great for like little small processes like image generation. I think is great because I actually did use AI on Wix.com because that's the website builder I use, and they have an AI image generator tool that they released like a few years ago, I think. And that one I used for the images for the sample packs, actually. So for those, I did actually use AI. Typically, I don't really use it, but here and there, it does definitely come in handy for creating some images that you can't create otherwise.
Well, with the world of AI and information being available everywhere today, where do you actually go to find your music producer and sound design news?
Mostly find out from that through like LinkedIn and Instagram, and I also find some just newsletters, emails that I'm like a part of from companies like Native Instruments and Isotope. I'll get like all of those emails just naturally come through by being a part of that. And I'll sometimes just hear it through word of mouth, just other producers and artist friends and composers. But yeah, a lot of it's just kind of day to day. I just naturally am already in that area and seeing all that around me. And whether it's on my digital feed or in person, I'm like always hearing that from other people too. So I kind of just word of mouth as well.
All right, now, Josh, where can people follow Slim Collective, hear more about what you are doing, what you're cooking up over there?
So Slim Collective is it's going to be on my website, slimcollective.com. That's my main website page. And then I also have my Instagram, Slim Collective Official, that people can go to. And those are going to be like the main 2 points. And if people want to get more of that artist side and more of my music that I create as well, then they can go to my artist page, the Beatmaster Slim Instagram page on there. But yeah, have those two main channels, and then I have it on YouTube as well. YouTube's the only other one I have, and that's gonna be Slim Collective on there as well for that.
Everyone, please go follow Josh on all of his socials that he just shared. Josh, last question to close out this episode one. Do you have any advice that you would like to share with future plugin makers interested to get into plugin making at all?
I would just say, like, just in general, a good rule of thumb is to stay true to yourself in whatever you're creating. Don't create something just to create it, and really think about what you're creating and why you want to create it and what its purpose is going to be. So like the what, why, and the purpose. Try and think about those. And sometimes it's even nice to create an outline. And although for the user interface, I don't create an outline for a lot of that stuff, but I do create an outline of like how the samples are going to play back, like what the keyword range will be, what effects I want to add in the user interface, just kind of like bullet points, just on a notepad, list it down, whatever way works best for you, but create some sort of outline and envision it beforehand. And even if it doesn't go as planned, because a lot of times it won't, and that's most likely what happens, just go with the flow on that and see what happens. And even trying something different than your first intended approach sometimes ends up being the best approach.
So there you have it. Josh just shared his story on how he went about building a business around creating VST plugins and didn't know any coding at all. He was able to use a tool like Rompler. There's other ones out there as well. If you are interested in becoming a guest on the show, or you know someone who we should interview with, go ahead and drop a comment below. Let us know who we should have on the next show. I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you everyone who was a part of this podcast. Thank you again, Josh, for being a guest. Until the next one, this is VST Visionaries. Go out and make something legendary. Thank you guys.